hope and say we probably have the strongest science team in business. We've got Dr. Lauren Hyde, Dr. Jackie Atkins up there, and they are going to take you through the process of how we get at these things called EPDs, expected progeny differences. And while they are talking, we want this to be somewhat interactive. So if you have questions, comments, anything like that, raise your hand. I'll come over and I'll stick this microphone in front of your face. And don't be scared. And we want you to ask questions. We need the microphone so everybody can hear. It's kind of a big room. So with that, I guess Dr. Lauren Hyde is starting out the show. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. School is now in session, so I hope you start taking notes because this is going to be the most interesting thing you can hear of the day. And I hope you have enough coffee so you don't fall asleep while I do that. Now, let's see if I can figure out how to use this thing. Okay, when you think of genetics, how many of you learned about genetics first through the Punnett square? Or how many of you are familiar with this? Raise your hands high. Okay, well this only tells just one part of the story, a very small part. This only represents one gene that we're talking about. Okay, you have a parent, parent one is heterozygous, meaning that the big B and the little b are different. Okay, and the other parent is also heterozygous for a trait. And this shows the proportion of animals that we're going to get that have these three genotypes. Like we have 25% are going to be homozygous for big B, 25% are going to be homozygous for the little, and then we have 50% are going to be heterozygous like their parents. Okay, that's just part of the story. What we call these are qualitative traits. And these are traits that are just combined, or just controlled by one or maybe 5 genes, 2 or 5 genes. They're measured on a categorical scale, which is an either-or type thing. Like when we think of things like this, we think of like the coat color, the animal's either black or red. A lot of our genetic defects are like that. We might be hearing about one, I think, in Jackie's talk, perhaps, or maybe later, maybe tomorrow or the next day, I believe. But, most of the genetic defects are like this too. They're controlled usually by one gene. You either have the disease or you don't. Okay? And a lot of these, as we move on in the future, before DNA testing came around, we would try to determine the genotypes for these animals through progeny testing. But now, increasingly with new DNA technology, we're getting a lot of tests for these now. So we can actually, accurately determine the animal's genotype through DNA testing. So now I have two animals here.
So Lauren, some of these old guys in the back here can't hear quite as well.
Oh, they can't, okay.
So if you talk, make sure you talk into the microphone.
Okay. Can I take this out? Okay, I'll just do this. Now, okay, what would you call these animals? They're both black. They're both pale. Do you think they have genetic defects? Is that why, one is like this, so small, and one of them, if you look at the people back here, he's probably about, 5.5 feet tall. Okay. Sure, you can maybe say like he has the genetic defect of dwarfism. There is a gene like that. I don't know what you'd call this one. But when you look at this is an example of how hip height is measured on, over a range of, we measure it in centimeters. But it's not an either-or thing. Like you could say, okay, this one here is short. Oops. Sorry about one button. You could say that this one here is short, and this one's tall. So you could say short or tall. But the thing is that Hyde is controlled by many genes. It's, certain traits, they're not controlled by just, one or two, like how we normally think. Some of them are controlled by, hundreds or thousands of genes, and then plus the interactions among all those genes. And these are examples of what we call quantitative traits. And this is usually what we're most interested in. Granted, disease is an important thing. We want to eliminate disease for our herds. We want to have the convenience of a cold animal over a horn. Black animals surely, tend to pay more for us. But with the science of EPDs, we're more interested in these quantitative traits. They're controlled by many genes. They are measured on a continuous scale. You have a wide range of values. For hip height, you can have 52 centimeters. You can have 48. You can have 47.5. So on over a wide range of values. Examples that you're probably familiar with would be mean weight, ribeye area. How about, is there anyone here who'd like to have one, since this is school? Play. What's another example of a qualitative or a quantitative trait?
Disposition of yourself.
That's a kind of an interesting one. Clay said disposition. Disposition is, we measure it categorically. We have scores from 1 to 6, facility scores. However, when we evaluate it, like on an underlying kind of scale, there is like a continuous type mechanism going on with disposition. It is controlled by many genes. So that is kind of an interesting one, even though we do measure it categorically. It is a good example of a quantitative trait. Now, when we measure quantitative traits, when we try to get at the underlying genotype of the animal, it's pretty difficult. We have to do this through some complex statistical methods. And now, lately, you've probably heard, Jackie's going to be talking about this. Now we can incorporate some of the DNA in this. Since these traits are controlled by so many genes, the DNA doesn't give all that information. It is, but it does contribute some. We can find out a little about some of the genes that are involved in these traits. And when we try to determine the genotype of these traits, we're only looking at what can be transmitted from a parent to an offspring. And in the big picture of things, we call those estimated breeding values, half of which, if you divide it in half, since a parent can only give half of its genes to its offspring, when you cut that estimated breeding value in half, that's when we get the expected progeny difference, or EPD, that so many of you have heard of. Who here hasn't heard of an EPD? Okay, great. Okay, so...
Why would you cut the EBV from that estimated breeding value in half?
Well, wait, if you were listening, we do cut those in half because
I was one of the old guys in the back.
Okay. But we cut them in half because the parent only transmits half of its genetic composition to its offspring. One parent contributes one half, the other parent contributes the other. Okay? Got it? So when we try to figure out the EPDs, we have to start out thinking of the genetic knowledge. This is the basis for everything. And that's just phenotype equals genotype plus environment. Phenotype is what we actually measure. You take your cattle across a scale, you find out what their weaning weight is. You look at them through the chute, you give them a docility score. That's just what we see, okay? But there's two components to that. There's the genetic makeup of the animal is acting on that phenotype. You know, it has genetics that, you know, contribute to that trait. But also, there's a lot of environmental factors that affect the trait. Things like, you know, well, I can't believe how lush it is around here. You know, you have, you know, these animals obviously are not at a disadvantage around here for feeding, I don't think. You know, they have such nice pastures. As Bob said, you know, cattle out west, they're used to brown grass. You know, like I was going to mow the lawn before I came here, but it was a little bit too crunchy, so I couldn't, you know, because mine was all brown too. So, you know, so that's kind of an environment too. But there's also things like the calf's dam. She provides an environment to the calf. A 2-year-old calf or a 2-year-old heifer, she's going to have, you know, since she's still growing, she's going to provide a tougher environment for her calf than a mature cow would, like a, you know, like a middle-aged cow. You know, also as cows age too, they also have a little bit more trouble providing adequate nutrition to their calves. So we have to take that out. We have to think, you know, okay, we have to put everyone on kind of a even scale to these animals to adequately compare them. So we have to separate out the environment. And that's just, you know, a nature versus nurture thing. When we do EPDs, we're just interested in the nature part. We want to remove the nurture part, because that does affect the animal's genotype. And when we do this, we use highly advanced statistical models. They fall under the category of something called BLUB, which means best linear unbiased prediction. Those are, that's a technique that was developed in the 1950s by a geneticist named Charles Henderson, who was, you know, he's known as the father of modern animal breeding, I suppose. And he developed these things in the early 1950s. I'll talk about this one, you know, in a few days when I give an update on the computer system. But we couldn't use Charles Henderson's methods until the late 1970s because we didn't have the computer power to do it. The BLUB is a system of linear equations. And if you remember your high school algebra, how many of you remember these problems? On the bottom here, solve for x and y if, you know, 2x plus 3y equals 6, 4x plus 9y equals 15. How many of you remember doing those? Okay, you didn't like them, did you? Yeah, I didn't think so. And so we're doing this, you know, essentially when we compute EPDs. However, we have, in our current evaluation now, we have 16 million animals, several different traits, several different environmental effects that we're trying to remove from these EPDs. We're trying to account for breed composition and heterosis, things like that. So we have way more than 2 equations going on here. We have millions and millions. We can't solve these, like, you know, I don't, you know, when I compute EPDs, I don't like stay home and like try to pencil this out by hand. There's no formula or anything like that because of the vast system that we're dealing with. We use something called iteration in order to compute these. So it's essentially a prediction. It's kind of like, okay, you know, when I would try to solve these things, if I was getting kind of sick of doing homework, I would just start doing trial and error. You know, you maybe put a 1 in for x and a 2 for y. Okay, if you put in a 1 for x and a 2 for y, you're going to get, on the first equation, 8 equals 8 equals 6. Okay, do you follow that? Well, that didn't make sense, but then you plug in different numbers. That's essentially what iteration is doing. We're trying to come up with something that gets us close enough to the solution, okay? And the way we do that, when we form all these equations, looks something like this. And, this is an example. This is just what we would use to solve for weaning weight and milk. That's it. We have other traits. These things are gigantic, okay? So that's why we need, advanced computer systems. And also, this whole system stems on what the heritability of the trait is. Now, the heritability of the trait is what proportion of the actual phenotype is driven by the genetics, the transmittable part of the genetics of the animals in the population. It differs across populations. These are Simmental heritabilities that I pulled out for, oops, I keep hitting the wrong button, sorry about that. These are Simmental heritabilities for calving birth weight, and ribeye area. You see that they range from 0 to 1 by definition. Calving since it's a 0.19, heritability is fairly low for that. Ribeye at 0.46, actually that's pretty high. Okay, you do find that, in general, some of the most lowly variable traits would be the reproductive traits, and then the structural traits like ribeye or hip height that I mentioned earlier. Things like structural traits tend to be more highly heritable. But this heritability kind of runs this thing. The Angus Association, they use different heritability estimates. We never know what they are exactly, so we have to estimate them using some more statistical procedures. But this is what we have currently. We'll probably, once we get the new system up and going, we'll probably revisit these. These were developed a while ago, so the population changes, they're population statistics. So as the population changes, we have to come up with different things. So
Lauren, I have a question. So how does heritability, maybe you're getting into
yes, I am. Gosh, okay, so the higher the
I was trying to be a good student, Lauren.
Okay.
Came here, but
Well, I anticipated this. Yeah. Okay, so the higher the heritability of the trait, the more accurately we can estimate an animal's phenotype from its own performance record. Okay? Because the higher the heritability, that means more the genetics influences that phenotype more. Okay, so we can pick it up like that. However, we're limited in what we can learn about that. It only tells part of the story. I said that a 0.46 was a fairly high heritability. That means that there's, 54% of that individual's phenotype that we don't really know anything about, okay? So the way we get around this is, probably one of your favorite things to do is collecting data. Large amounts of performance data are what is required to release. Okay, that's why we depend on all of you to faithfully submit your pedigree and performance records. Okay, that includes the animal's own performance. From when it's a calf, we through its whole lifetime. We collect birth weights, weaning weights, yearling weights, disposition at weaning. Some of us collect carcass data. So we're always collecting data for its whole life on the animal itself, its progeny, as it becomes a parent. And also we can use like performance records from the animal's other other relatives, like its cousins and its grandparents, its aunts, its uncles, that kind of thing. But that doesn't have that much of it, okay? What is the most influential in determining the EPD is progeny records, okay? And so what we need from you, I should probably switch these, what we need from you as part of this situation, or the system, are accurate pedigree records. Now Jackie's going to touch on that in her program, but we do need accurate pedigree information, which makes sense. You have to know who the parents really are. But we need performance data on as many traits as possible in complete contemporary groups. Now, how many of you know what a contemporary group is? Okay, some of you don't. So, also, I forgot to touch on this. The people that have you heard of the Performance Advocate Program? These are people who are recognized by the ASA as turning in performance records for as many traits on as many animals as they can in contemporary groups. Okay. Now, contemporary group are animals that are essentially raised together. They're of the same sex. You can't really compare a male and female. You know, they have different growth rates. You know, different characteristics, okay? But they are close in age within our system, our EPD system. They're put in 90-day age window groups, so they're close in age, and they're raised in the same kind of management setting, you know, the same kind of feed. They're raised in the same pasture. Since birth, like these animals will be in a group, and some will fall out as they age. Okay, so a contemporary group will never get bigger. It always is going to get smaller or stay the same. Okay? And, you know, ideally a contemporary group would include as many animals as you can accurately compare. You know, this is great out west. You know, we have a lot of land out there. We have a lot of big herds, you know, Texas especially. You know, there's a lot of land out there. So we have contemporary groups of, you know, hundreds of animals. You know, here in Pennsylvania, I've noticed that it's very small. You know, so some of you probably don't have, you know, like as many cattle as they do in the West here. So you maybe have very small groups. But the important thing is it only takes two. It just takes two animals to form a group. And we need two just so we can measure differences. EPDs are, since they're computed using an iterative method, you know, I can go into the math of it, but, you know, this is kind of like an 8 o'clock class. I don't think so. However, I kind of lost my train of thought. It's a science of differences, so we have to have animals in head-to-head competition with each other to understand their genetic differences. Now, I'll give you an example. Okay, here's a contemporary group with 5 animals in it. We have their IDs on the left, and their weaning weights are on the right. And I ordered the weaning weights from highest to lowest, okay? So animal 2142 has a weaning weight of 801. And as we go down, the lowest one, the lowest weaning weight in the group is the 671. Okay, now how many of you have remember the child's magazine called Highlights? Okay. How many of you remember Goofus and Gallant? Just one? Okay, Goofus and Gallant was my favorite thing in Highlights. Whenever we did it, that was the first page I looked at. It always had these photos, like Goofus and Gallant, I don't know if they were brothers or what, but it would have one page one side, and it showed Gallant doing all these things, and Goofus would be doing things on the other page. I just kind of liked Goofus because he was kind of nasty. Like there might be a picture of like Goofus like maybe pushing down the lid on the playground. And then on the other page, there would be Gallant picking that child up by his hand and, making sure he was okay. Okay. So, Goofus and Gallant, they have this herd of cattle together. Okay? They're brothers. And Goofus, they wean their calves, and so Goofus reports this stuff to the association. He records these 5 animals. Okay, and then he leaves and he goes and volunteers somewhere. He's probably reading to the blind or, helping animals or something, so Goofus is first. So, okay, so wait, let me go back here. Okay, so Goofus, Gallant reports this data, finds out that, the average weaning weight of the population of this group is 748 pounds. And just as an example, animal 2142, who has the 801 weaning weight, he has a weaning weight ratio of 107.1, okay? So he goes and volunteers somewhere, leading Goofus along with the dad. Goofus is kind of like, well, we don't have that much money, because Gallant's always like going around volunteering and stuff. He never does any work, so we don't get any money out of it. So, I can't afford registering 5 cattle. I can only do 3. So I'm going to just take out these lower 2 scores, or these lower 2 weights, and just report my good ones. Okay? So he adds it up. He can do math. Goofus is okay at math. So he finds out that there's an average weaning weight of 780 pounds. But the weaning weight ratio of that first animal goes down to 102.7 from 107.1. He's like, oh gosh, that's not, I kind of don't like that. This animal's ratio kind of went down, so now it's going to make him look bad. And I really, we really have to sell this because that's how we're going to make our money, So, Goofus looks at the data, and he says, well, I know how we can, if like cutting out the bad ones made them look worse, then maybe cutting out the other good ones will make them look better. And sure enough, he just gets rid of everything and decides that he's just going to record the top weaning weight and the lower weaning weight. So he comes up with a lower average weaning weight of 736 pounds, but 2142's ratio has gone up. He's like, okay, that's how I'm going to make money. This bull looks really good. We're going to market him. Gallant's not going to know a thing. Okay, so what happens when they sell this bull and he starts getting used across different herds? What kind of data are the most important? That's a quiz for all of you. Sally, brought to you data. Excellent. Okay, you can come to head of the class. Once he starts getting progeny data coming in, that bull, well, he might not necessarily go down. Like somebody said, oh, he's going to go down. He might not necessarily. He might actually be a superior animal. However, that data is going to make him, it's going to make his EPDs go in the right direction. The more progeny data we get, the more it's going to center around what his true breeding value actually is. So essentially, the faulty data that was used, by Gallant, or by Goofus to report the data, it's going to get washed away. And that's what's so good about the EPD system that we use. It's very robust, it's very powerful, and you just, okay, a question from Don.
What kind of filters does the ASA have in place to maybe try to catch some of these individual progeny records that appear to be so far out from the apparent average?
We do look at animals. Okay, one of the things with EPDs that is one of the underlying assumptions of the whole block system is the assumption of normality, which is the bell curve. Okay, things are, things are way out in the tails. Okay, like the bell curve, you have the mean is of the Hyde chart, and then the tails have all the outliers on them. We do remove some of those outliers. Okay, if they're way out, like where like say, you have birth weights, say that range from say 60 to 80 pounds, and then there's one in there that's 200. We'll remove the 200-pounder. Okay, because that's very far away from the average. Let's see. We also do have just normal edits, as we do have like for some of the traits they have to fall within a certain range, but they're pretty generous ranges. And this is to catch that's just like for weaning weight, I believe the range is 200 to 2,000 pounds, which is pretty generous. But it catches things like, we have, there might be data in there that's been miscoded, and we might have like a 5,000 pound weaning weight. So that would get taken out as well.
I'd like to add a little bit to that. So what Lauren is talking about is something that we struggle with and have since the beginning of the collection of performance data. We know that some people fudge. And we have systems in place to catch some of that fudging. And frankly, we're not going to tell you exactly how we do it all, because that would help the fudgers. But what I always say, anybody that thinks they can fudge and get away with it is a fool. Because with EPDs, the beauty of EPDs are, eventually the truth will come out. You can have a bull that you want to make look like a superstar, and you can fudge his data. And sure, you can make that bull look like a superstar. Well, what happens then, when that bull gets used by other people, they don't have any incentive to make that bull the superstar because he's not their bull. And so the truth always comes out in EPDs. So trying to fudge is not going to get you anywhere but egg on your face.
Okay, I could keep going. Like I kind of gave you like, a whole book's worth of stuff in a few minutes. Yeah, Fred?
What do we have in place that might allow us to collect more data? Talking about in other words, what is the importance of total herd enrollment as far as collection of data?
Total and herd enrollment helps to get those complete contemporary groups that we need. Okay? That's why we do it. If we're trying to get away from what Goofus was doing and do what Gallon was doing. We want to try to force that in a way. I shouldn't say force, because it kind of sounds like we're, making agreements or something. But it is a mechanism to get at complete reporting, so that we can evaluate animals better. Okay, and it's the more people who do that too, you're helping yourself, but you're also helping others as you put in a system.
I'd also add to that, so one thing we have in place that some other breeds don't, is we have free data recording. Doesn't cost you any more. The Goofus, Lauren gave the example of Goofus wanting to save money by not sending in some records. In our system, it doesn't matter, it doesn't save you money. Okay? If you're on THE, you pay a flat fee per cow. So by sending in more data, it's It's not costing you anything. Now, there was a time in our past where we actually charged was that a performance calculation fee, Steve? And did it get up to $5 or something? And we were concerned that that would dissuade people from actually sending in data. And so we did away with that performance calculation fee. Other breeds still have those benefits in place. So things like that, things like the performance advocate. By the way, Lauren mentioned the performance advocate program. How many in here are performance advocates? So a lot of you actually, pretty impressive proportion of you are performance advocates, and that's great. So that was created by the board a number of years ago. Michael Dykeman over there had a lot to do with that. Pushed it through the board to recognize people that submit a high proportion of their data.
Okay, I think I'm just, oh, Brian?
Yeah, Scott, could you go through the scenario of a real popular bull? The first year of calves, the data coming in is mostly embryo transplant calves. And yet, I've seen some bulls who, and birth weight's primarily one of the main things that comes in. And I've seen some bulls crash in that very first year. Could you explain that? Because how the embryo transplant data gets accounted for as contemporaries and all that?
Actually, we don't use the embryo transfer data right
So
now.
then you don't use any of that, so what?
Except in carcass, I believe. In the carcass
That would be a lot
evaluation.
later on, so.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the new system.
Well, I think one of the things you could speak to what Brian's saying is, you know, just by chance, animals change. They start off, they might be predicted to be a superstar based on their pedigree. Then you collect some data on them, themselves, their own phenotypes, birth weight, mean weight, yearling weight, ultrasound, whatever. They might even be projected to be a bigger superstar. But then the calves start coming in, and the reality is they weren't so hot. They really weren't so hot. And that's why, you know, and I didn't mean to maybe I gave the wrong impression that the only reason bulls change a lot is because there was fudging going on. Bulls change a lot because the reality is a low accuracy EPD is just that. It's something you wouldn't hang your hat on. Okay, and as time goes on and you start collecting lots and lots of data, bulls can be very, very different. I think Jackie has a slide, maybe I'm not sure if she has it, but some of you people that have been around a long time, there was a flush back in the old days. Don Vernon probably remembers. There's a bull called Eagle. There's a bull called Mr. Clean. Maybe a Saluda Simmental was in there, but there were several bulls in the same flush. Some of them were world beaters for cavities. Some of them were on the other end of the spectrum. Some of them were world beaters for growth. Some of them were low growth. And so where an animal starts out, pedigree, can be very different to where he ends up. And it's through progeny data, like Lauren has said. Progeny data is a true test. And we have it up at ASA, right? Or we have a stained glass window, and the ultimate, the bottom line says, and Don Vernon will know this, progeny tells you what an animal truly is.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So you folks are incredibly talented in understanding how these EPDs are calculated and how it all comes together. But as a producer who has maybe 25 cows, I'm looking at a couple bulls in your sire source. And one bull for yearling weight is 100, and another one is 65. Does that tell me one's just 65 points above breed average? What does that tell me about the bulls? How do I read a bull that's 100 and one that's 65?
Okay. I'll just, okay, my slides are gone because we were doing it. Okay, I was gonna just skip this part, but okay, so we have the sire summary, EPDs go in the sire summary, right? And you want to know how to interpret the EPDs?
If I'm going to compare two bulls, yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, okay. EPDs are, I said this earlier, it's a way of comparing two animals. So you're looking at differences. You have one that has a 100-pound weaning weight, or yearly weight, and one that has a 65. What's the difference between those? 35 pounds, okay? On average, you know, since it's all based on that normal curve, so we're talking about averages here, we'd expect that 100-pound EPD bull, we'd expect his progeny to have 35 pounds heavier when they're yearlings than the other bull. That's how we would interpret that. We don't say like, oh, his are gonna, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, you might say like, oh, that means his birth weight or his yearling weights are going to be 100 pounds. We're just looking at the differences between that. And it helps to know, like, it's really good to have a good idea as Simmental breeders what the breed averages are for the EPDs that you're using, just so that you know what is average and what, you know, like 65 pounds is pretty low. You know, the percentile rankings table will give you that information. So, and offhand, I don't know, what is the breed average for yearling weight? Where'd Wade go? Or Steve, would you know? Okay, well, you make the table, so. Yeah, I don't know, I have to look on the website, you know, because it's, you know, I have lots of numbers in my head. 92. Okay, average is 92, so, you know, so we know that the 100-pound yearling weight in eagle is 8 pounds higher than the average, okay? And the 65 pounds bull is much lower, about 30 pounds lower than that. So does that help you? Okay. Okay.
I've got a young man here that wants to ask a question.
Original meeting in 1968, a gentleman got up and he said he wanted the association to have somebody there where they wean all their calves, but he didn't want anybody to cheat. He didn't understand that predators were within a herd. In other words, if you had a bull that weight index of 150, means you also had one at home that was 50.
Yeah.
So you were just lying to yourself when you tried to cheat.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You're just lying to yourself if you try to cheat. That's
right on the money there.
Yeah, yeah. And since I am talking about EPDs, I'll just do one more slide here, and then I have to hand it over so we don't run too late. Part of EPDs, too, they always are associated with an accuracy value. The accuracy value goes from 0 to 1. The higher it is, the more accurate it is. And what it really measures is how strong the relationship is between what our estimate through the EPD is and what its actual true value is of genetic merit. We don't know that true value, but we can come up with, you know, with good estimates of certain things. We can kind of come up with, you know, how like strong that relationship could be, okay? So the higher number, the more faith we have in that EPD represents that animal's breeding value. That's why, it's going back to Brian's question, you know, a lower accuracy animal has a lot of change in it. As they add more data, that EPD will kind of fluctuate around. Once an animal starts getting thousands of progeny, it's going to get closer and closer to what we think is its true value. Okay, so, you know, like a proven bull, you know, like with an accuracy in the 0.9s, you know, you probably, it's just an assessment, a way to measure your risk. Like, you can say, you know, like, I don't really want to take any chances in my herd, so I'm going to use one who is very well proven. Some people might be like, well, I'll just use all my young bulls and just kind of see what happens. You know, there might be a good one, there might not be bad, I don't You know, so I'll use a lower accuracy goal. So it's just an assessment of risk, okay?
More, but maybe we should point out that the young rule, probability that CP going up or down.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gordon. As a goal improves in accuracy, you know, as its value kind of changes, going towards its true value, it has an equal chance of going up or down. Most of, you know, every call that we get about EPDs, it's not about them going up or going in a more favorable direction, I should say. You know, because birth weight, you know, down is better. But, you know, you know, the ones that are just, you know, on the unfavorable side that we get the calls about. But it's equal, you know, 50-50% or 50-50 chance going up or down as the data, as we get more data. And then the range of those changes goes down, it decreases as that animal's accuracy improves. So that's why you don't see change in, you know, well-proven bulls. So yeah, another question.
Yeah, one question. Historically, how much data is out there still on the original Simmental breed? Now you look at the Simmental breed, and there's so much Black Angus involved in it historically for the last 20-some years. Is there any data? We're comparing now an original Simmental breed that was historically from Europe to today American black Simmentals, which is just about all that's out there. You look back through the historic stuff, you can find Angus cattle back in the genetics regularly. They're not the same frame of cattle. They don't look anything alike. They didn't milk the same way historically. Is there any data out there that still keeps only compares historical Simmentals and not conglomerates at all with the now black Simmental that's out there now?
Yeah, we do have some breeders like Fred, does have full bloods. Fred, maybe you can even answer that better than I can. There aren't many full blood breeders left. Yeah. You know,
You can't go, Jackie, there is breed averages posted on the website for both the purebreds, the Sim Angus crosses, and then the full bloods would show the averages, even though they're all running the same genetic evaluation. They pull out then the full bloods and get the averages for the full bloods, the averages for the Simmers, the averages for the Sim Angus, and the 50 most used sires, I think, is the other breed average that's posted there on the website. So those full blood averages are still there. Yes, the numbers are smaller, but with our friends from north of the Canadian, in Canada, those full blood numbers, you know, still maintain themselves. About 7 or 8% of the registry is what those full blood numbers, and they're still kept. Steve, they still pull them out so we can look at them individually. And if you register a straight full blood animal, those EPDs and those percentages are based upon the full blood chart, not upon the purebred chart.
Yeah, Fred mentioned our friends to the north there, and our good friend to the north is actually to the south of him, right, sitting behind Bruce Holmquist. We should introduce him. Stand up there, Bruce. Canadian Simmental Association. Very friends with us for a long time. We've collaborated on a lot of things. He has, well, if I have time, we're getting kind of tight here, but he's going to show a chart that shows how much DNA data the Canadian Simmental Association has contributed to our pool of DNA data, which is, as time goes forward, the amount of DNA data we have is going to be very critical, very important in the prediction, improving the accuracy of prediction. And Bruce was instrumental in pulling off a major coup. We got the Canadian government and some other other people to throw lots of money together, and they did lots and lots of genotyping. So we've got a lot of Simmental genotypes in the database, and a lot of that comes from north of the border. And a lot of that would be, like Fred says, up in Canada, what do you have? Still 40% of your population is full blood?
Of the data submitted to us, about 25% still full blood weight. But I think the important thing to realize with the data coming out of there is that we do have a lot of herds that run both purebred and full blood cattle. So through that contemporary grouping structure, that's where the data gets compared in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of value attached to that.
Yeah. So what Bruce is saying, that those head-to-head comparisons are really ideal. We can do genetic evaluation without head-to-head, but it's even more, probably more meaningful if you have head-to-head comparisons. And in Canada, there are plenty of contemporary groups that have full bloods and purebred Simmental and hybrids as well in the same contemporary group. So very valuable data.
Okay, well, we should probably move on with Jackie, or else we're going to be cutting into the gray. You might need one after all this math. But I'll tell you, I think that might be the end of the math for the day. Jackie's going to talk about the other part of computing EPDs. Remember how I said that DNA is now being used in the computation of EPDs? Well, Jackie's going to talk